Welcome back to State and Local Government and Politics, Module 6, Legislatures, Part 5, Balance of Executive Power. In a separation of powers governmental system, the three branches of government are expected to share power rather than allowing one branch to have disproportionate power over the others. This arrangement of governmental power has been commonly known as the checks and balances system. The third principal role a legislature plays, therefore, is balancing the power of the executive. Checks and balances are when the three branches of government share power rather than allowing one branch to have substantial power over the others. This balancing role can be achieved by performing legislative oversight that involves the legislature's review and evaluation of selected activities of the executive branch and exercising the power of the purse, that is, carrying out the responsibility of developing the state budget. The job of exercising legislative oversight is carried out by a combination of standing committees, select committees, and task forces. A standing committee is a permanent committee established in a legislature, usually focusing on a policy area. A select committee is a temporary legislative committee established for a limited time period and for a special purpose. And a task force is a temporary group formed to work on a special defined task or activity. Common forms of oversight activities include periodic review of administrative rules, the enactment of sunset provisions in legislations, the passage of legislation calling for studies into particular problems or existing programs, the engagement in active fiscal oversight and the provision of advice to executive agencies, and the granting of consent to gubernatorial appointments. Administrative rules are rules and regulations issued by state executive branches. A sunset provision or clause is a provision in a statute that terminates or repeals all or portions of the law after a specific date, unless further legislative action is taken to extend it. State legislatures assume the role of oversight in order to assure that laws are being implemented efficiently and effectively in the manner originally intended by the legislature. The legislature often evaluates the executive branch's policy and programs through the employment of policy analysis and auditors working for legislative committees. These analysts and auditors attempt to assess progress towards the objectives and goals of policies and agencies reflecting the original intent of the legislation. Legislatures periodically review the rules and regulations employed by the executive branch in order to determine whether the intent of the law is being realized. If the legislature determines that an agency's rules and regulations are unsatisfactory, they can insist that the rules be modified or suspended. In some cases, the legislature retains the right to discontinue support for a program. This review process often accompanies budget hearings and ultimate budget approval for state agencies. Some states have determined that the legislative veto, an action of constraint upon a public agency by a legislature after legislation has been placed into law, is an unlawful violation of the separation of powers. Even without explicitly revoking a rule or regulation by direct action of the legislature after a law has been duly enacted, the legislature can exert great influence over previously enacted statutes by reducing the agency's budgetary allotment in order to encourage more faithful compliance with legislative wishes. Sunset laws are those pieces of legislation featuring a built-in expiration date for a statute. Legislation of this nature allows the legislature to review, implement changes in, or terminate a program simply by not renewing the existing law. The review and control of state and federal pass-through funds is one of the most significant powers exercised by state legislatures. By holding the purse strings at both the state and federal level, the independence of the legislative branch ensures that the bureaucracy and executive branch agency leadership remains quite dependent upon legislative support. In Part 6 of Module 6 on legislatures, we'll discuss variations among state legislatures.